In this film, we'll be talking about the background to the new weapon system, what makes up SA80, how the trials progressed, and what happens from now on with regard to introduction and conversion. But first of all, why have we got a new family of small arms coming into service?
To answer that question, we must first turn to staff requirement number 3518, the document upon which the weapons and some of their ancillaries have been based. Now, in that staff requirement, which was written in December 1974, states that the weapons required are an individual weapon and a light support weapon firing a common round. They are to be light, compact and easy to handle. It goes on to say that the individual weapon will be the personal weapon for all British Forces personnel, except for those carrying the light support weapon or any other specialist personal weapon. The weapons to be replaced are the SMG, the LMG and GPMG in the light role, and for those that still have it, the number 4 rifle. And the General Staff stated these weapons no longer satisfactorily meet our requirements for the following reasons.
First of all, they said that they are too heavy, principally because the ammunition they're using, the 7.62, is unnecessarily large and powerful for the average section task.
The size and weight of the weapons limit quick and effective use, especially in close country and confined spaces. They also impose penalties on the soldier's mobility and endurance when on foot.
As many of us know, they also place an unnecessarily high demand on a soldier's skill to produce accurate fire.
Impose operational and logistic penalties in the forward area because the 7.62 ball and belt ammunition are not readily interchangeable.
Moreover, by 1986 the SLR will have been in service some 28 years, so it's certainly coming to the end of its useful life. Indeed, it's becoming increasingly costly and difficult to repair and to maintain in service in general.
The SMG has too short an effective range, and in common with the SLR and GPMG, does not incorporate advances in technology, particularly in the use of stronger and lighter materials, nor developments in the field of ammunition.
So that was a list of reasons that the General Staff gave why they consider the present weapon system to be no longer adequate for our needs. They then went on to justify their solution, namely the SA80 weapon system, with the following set of points.
The operational effectiveness of the soldier will be improved. The load carried by the section will be significantly lightened without reducing the fire effect.
The mobility of the dismounted section will now no longer be limited by the amount of weight that has to be carried by the number 1 on the GPMG.
There will only be one type of small arms ammunition in the dismounted section.
And the simple weapon system, which SA80 is, will demand less skill from the soldier and thus produce a valuable reduction in the training load.
The individual weapon, with its enhanced capability, will give the armed forces a weapon which is more suitable for use in internal security operations, particularly in an urban environment where a quick, accurate engagement of a fleeting target is essential.
Now, that staff requirement, that document, obviously covers very many other points apart from the pros and cons which we very quickly listed there. Indeed, it goes into the characteristic requirements of each of the weapons and of some of the ancillaries. But perhaps the other very important part of the document concerns accuracy and rates of fire. As far as accuracy is concerned, this is what it had to say. In general, the individual weapon will enable a trained firer, when under stress, to achieve a first round hit on a standing man at all ranges out to 300 meters. And the light support weapon is to be able to deliver effective suppressive fire on point and area targets out to 600 meters. As for the rates of fire, the document was also quite detailed and basically asked for a steady rate of fire over very long periods, working to an extremely rapid rate of fire over very much shorter ones. All in all, therefore, what the staff were after were 2 weapons to replace 4, or 5 if you count that number 4 rifle, ones that fired the same ammunition, both single shot and automatic, and ones that were lighter and obviously more effective than their predecessors. So what has been produced to fit that General Staff requirement? The SA80 family consists of the light support weapon, the LSW, the individual weapon, the IW, their sights and ancillaries. Let's first take a look at the individual weapon. It's a highly reliable, robust, accurate and compact rifle, and when fitted with a bayonet and a full magazine, it weighs 12 pounds, or 5.6 kilograms, which is slightly less than the SLR. And at 31 inches, 770 millimeters, it is somewhat shorter. The IW will replace the SLR and SMG and has both single shot and automatic fire capability. Let's have a look at the weapon in more detail then. Here we see the individual weapon in its basic form without either a sight or a magazine. And we start at the flash eliminator. Moving back down the weapon, there is the gas plug, the gas block with a dovetail fitting to allow the foresight to be placed on it, plastic hand guard which is hinged to allow access to the gas parts, the safety catch, the trigger and pistol grip, a further dovetail slide on top of the weapon which is for either an iron sight or an optic sight, the cocking handle, the magazine housing, the dust cover, and a holding opening device to allow the working parts to be held back, and right at the back, the sling attachment point. Having turned the weapon round, we're now looking at the left-hand side of it, and we first see the front sling attachment point, which can be placed on the other side of the weapon, the top cover opening clip, which holds the top cover down, the first of two body locking pins, this one the lower body locking pin, the magazine release catch, the bolt release catch, which allows the working parts to be moved forward if they have been held back, the change lever to select either repetition or automatic fire, the upper body locking pin, and once again the rear sling attachment. The IW will be fitted with an optic sight for those troops in an infantry role, that is the frontline troops in the Royal Marines, the infantry, the SAS and the RAF regiment, and an iron sight for the remainder. We'll be looking at these a little later. The light support weapon will replace the LMG and the GPMG in the light role. With a full magazine fitted, it weighs 14 pounds, 6.3 kilograms, which is less than half that of the GPMG. 85% of the individual weapon and light support weapon parts are interchangeable, and the differences on the LSW are as follows. It has a bipod at the front end and a heavier barrel. And at the rear end there is a hand grip and butt strap for better control of automatic fire. All LSWs will be fitted with a SUSAT sight, and the ammunition, magazine, single shot and automatic fire capability are the same for both weapons. Because of their similarity, both weapons strip down in much the same way. As mentioned earlier, those of you in the frontline infantry role will have an optic sight fitted to your IW, as will all LSWs. The sight concerned is the SUSAT, the Sight Unit Small Arms Trilux. The SUSAT has a ×4 magnification and an emergency battle sight built into the top casing. It has a rubberized eyepiece, a range scale ranging from 300 to 800 meters, an adjusting drum for elevation, a brightness control knob, a lifting plate which enables the sight to be correctly mounted on the weapon, a front adjusting drum for direction, and the front of the sight itself is angled to prevent excessive rain getting in and also to deflect the light. Looking at the far side of the sight, we can see the securing clamps, and you can see that the zero adjusting drums are now very clearly marked. The sight is fitted to both weapons in the same manner by raising the top cover, sliding on the sight while holding the lifting plate into one of the 6 recesses, depending on one's eye relief, and tightening the wing nuts. Removal and refitting does not affect the zero, and the Suzat comes equipped with a protective cover. For every 4 Suzats, a spare secondary iron sight will be carried. All those not in an infantry role will have the secondary iron sight fitted to their IW. It is similar in principle to the SLR sight in that there is a back sight and a foresight, although the back sight has a double leaf aperture. The larger 6mm aperture for ranges over 300 meters and the smaller 2mm aperture for ranges below that. There is also a small trilux tube in the foresight to improve night firing, and the back sight also doubles as a carrying handle. There will be one type of bayonet issued with the individual weapon. It is fitted over the flash eliminator. It is 11 inches long and has a 7-inch blade and incorporates a bottle opener. There will be 2 types of scabbard on issue, one for those in an infantry role and one for everyone else. The non-infantry role scabbard will be a plain plastic sheath. The one we see here is the infantry role version, which has additional features. It has a sharpening stone and a saw, and when matched with the bayonet forms a set of wire cutters. Both weapons are equipped with the same revolutionary sling. It is made up of 2 nylon straps and a quick release catch. When fitted, the weapon is naturally carried in the high port position and can be released to allow the use of both hands. The straps are fully adjustable. It can, however, be brought very swiftly into action by use of the quick release catch. And even if dropped, the weapon will still remain attached to the person. The weapon can also be slung on a man's back, which has obvious benefits for those who need to use both hands. The cleaning kit is also the same for both weapons and comprises the following: the cleaning roll itself, a 2-part cleaning rod, a bore brush, an oil bottle, a nylon brush, a combination tool, a chamber and barrel extension brush, a muzzle cover, a weighted pull-through, and there will also be a spare firing pin and some swabs and flannelette. Both weapons will use the same 30-round magazine, which works and is stripped down in the same way as the SLR magazine. SA80 weapons will fire the standard NATO 5.56mm round, seen here on the right, which is based on the Belgium SS109 round. As you can see, it is very much smaller than its 7.62 predecessor and obviously weighs a great deal less. The round has a solid steel core and is more effective out to 600 meters than the 7.62 bullet. There will be 4 types of ammunition in service: live, tracer, blank, and drill. There will be a 10-round ammunition clip and ammunition charger, and a bandolier holding 150 rounds will also come into service. Both weapons will use the same blank firing attachment. Finally, let us have a quick look at the 2 weapons in action and go through some of their main characteristics. Both weapons have a high muzzle velocity with a cyclic rate of fire between 670 and 700 rounds per minute. As you can see, the IW has very little recoil and has proved exceptionally accurate in trials. It is easy to handle, comfortable and versatile, and the automatic capability will prove useful in ambushes, fibua, CQB and many other phases of war. With 2 LSWs per section, the small unit has greatly increased flexibility. The LSW-2 has little recoil and an outstanding first-round accuracy. The shoulder strap and hand grip increase the control of the weapon, although it can be fired like a rifle if necessary. Overall then, the rifle section will be able to put down more accurate firepower for longer intervals with SA80 than they can do at present. Obviously all this new weaponry and equipment wasn't simply produced on the details as laid down in that staff requirement. All of it has undergone comprehensive user trials, and what we've just seen is a long way from what the kit actually looked like when it was first produced for trials. Each time a trial report recommended an improvement, that was incorporated in the next pre-production model, and so on and so forth really, until we've arrived at what you've just seen. But the user trials are continuing even now, and a little later on we'll be talking about the troop trials, which are due to take place next year.
All the trials that have taken place have involved typical users, men drawn from units at random, and not because they were busily shots or particularly adept at skill at arms. And the process of a trial is well defined. Most of the user trials have been carried out at the Infantry Trial and Development Unit at Warminster, and the sequence they followed was something like this. They took the General Staff Requirement document and worked out exactly what needed doing to prove that the new weapons and their ancillaries met it. They then tested the present set of weapons to give them basis for comparison, then using the same guinea pigs, tested the new set of weapons and ancillaries.
The trials have really been going on in earnest since the late 1970s, when one of the early prototype weapons took part in a NATO trial. That weapon had the 4.85mm round. Since then, trials have been conducted into practically every eventuality you can think of. There have been trials to see the effects of hot temperatures, of cold temperatures, of seawater, of snow and mud. They've looked at the effects on both men and weapons of crawling, walking, running, jumping, parachuting, airdropping and swimming. And they've carried out extensive firing trials in all types of weather, all conditions of light, and wearing the full spectrum of webbing and NBC equipment. And the weapons have been trialled against other contemporary weapons from other countries. All in all, therefore, a great deal of effort has gone into ensuring that we get the weapons that the General Staff asked for, and that, of course, we get the most reliable and capable versions possible.
Several interesting facts emerged from these trials, and a few of them are worth mentioning. An earlier trial pitted the SLR against the individual weapon on the annual personal weapon test, and on average, firers achieved 28% better results with the Optic Sight and 14% better results with the iron sight over the results of the SLR. And although the weapons can only be fired right-handed at the moment, on 2 major trials, left-handers came out with the best results.
There was a great deal of time spent deciding whether or not to go for an open bolt or a closed bolt weapon system for the light support weapon. Both types of weapons have their advantages and disadvantages, and in the end the closed bolt weapon system was chosen, basically because it was inherently more accurate than the open bolt version. Suffice to say, as far as user trials are concerned, many trials have taken place, and many more will be taking place on the production version of the weapons when they come off the factory line.
The equipment you've just seen will come into service with the weapons, but work is still progressing on several other pieces of the kit that will come into service in due course. Tenders are out at the moment for a new night sight, which will be called a common weapon sight, and it will be used not only for the SA80, but probably LO80. The new night sight is not part of the same staff requirement, so the in-service date, unfortunately, is not synchronized with the issue of the new weapons, but we hope to see it in production by mid-1986. Until it comes into service, we will continue to use the IWS, and a special bracket has been developed at Warminster so the sight can fit the new weapon. The new night sight will be termed a third generation sight. It will be image intensifying like the IWS, but it will only be a third of the size and a third of the weight, and it should have far better definitions at longer ranges.
A new 2.2 adapter is also planned, and that's been produced by an American firm called Seiko. It's already undergone some trials at the Infantry Trials and Development Unit, and they hope to see that too in service sometime in 1986. Vehicle clips and vehicle mounts have been thought about and are being trialled and developed at Warminster at the moment. And this slide shows the most likely contender, which is basically a simple slot for the butt to go in on the right-hand side there, and some form of spring clip in which to put the barrel on the left.
A great deal of work has also gone into the development of a low-powered training round. And what we're seeking is a round that's just as accurate as a normal ball round, but one that doesn't ricochet, because it will crumble on impact. And the object being to try and reduce the size of a template width, which is governed by ricochet, but still allow very realistic training to take place, because the round will be both accurate and travel a good distance. This has obviously set the boffins at Radway Green no small task, as the development of ammunition is generally geared to long distance and destructive power. But we hope to see this round into production by the end of next year.
Finally, some of you may have heard about the various trials conducted into projected grenades. There were several, and none of them proved altogether successful. All the grenades fitted over the individual weapon barrel, and the problems were generally associated with trading off accuracy for destructive power. Those with a small amount of explosive content were obviously much lighter and could be fired with some very great first-time accuracy. But they didn't do the destruction that was required at the far end. And when they tried to put more explosive in, enough to do the destruction they wanted, they found that they couldn't be fired with any first-time accuracy. So thoughts have turned away from that sort of projectile grenade to some other form of assault weapon, probably shoulder-borne with a range of about 100 to 150 meters. Unlike the 66mm, which it sounds like, it wouldn't have a shaped charge, which is designed to attack armour, more a simple explosive charge designed to be fired at bunkers, trenches, fortified houses, that sort of thing. There is funding for this project, and it's hoped that a general staff requirement can be formulated in the not-too-distant future.
We turn now to the deployment plan for the new weapons, and the official in-service date is the 1st of November 1985. And as the name implies, the first bulk issue of the weapons will go to a major unit on that date. The deployment has been broken down into priorities for a period of 8 or 9 years.
We'll take a couple of seconds to have a look at the slides so that you can all find out where you slot into the order of priority. You may of course have to anticipate where your next posting will be and then find out where that is in the order of priority. Right at the top of the priority list you will see the troop trials units. They're based worldwide and they cover almost the full spectrum of infantry rolled units. A major unit in the UK for 2 Commando Royal Marines, a major unit in BAOR, 1 Royal Scots, and 5 small units, company-sized units, dotted around the world. We'll be talking more about the troop trials in a few moments. The actual deployment plan unit by unit is unfortunately still classified, as it's very much tied in with arms plots. But we do have the order in which the first year's worth of weapons will be deployed, so that you will at least know where the nearest weapons are to you. They can be seen as follows. Starting at the end of this year, the 4th quarter of 1985, the electrical and mechanical engineers get hold of it, and then followed by those major training establishments and the start of the troop trials units. Then into the 1st quarter of 1986, the remaining troop trials units, and the start of the infantry depots. The 2nd quarter of 1986 will see the remaining infantry depots get their weapons and the remaining major training establishments in the UK. The 3rd quarter of 1986 will see the remaining trials and training establishments in all the services get their weapons, and then the start of the infantry rolled UK-based battalions. There will obviously be some juggling in the dates, subject to fluctuations that may occur in the production of the weapon at the small arms factory in Enfield. If there is a commander who still doesn't know when his unit may be receiving the weapon, he should be able to get it through the normal G3, G4 chain of command, because I know they have got the document for consideration at the moment.
The distribution of each weapon varies considerably between units, but in general it's based on the staff requirement, and that is, everyone will receive an individual weapon as his personal weapon, except for those being issued with a light support weapon or any other specialist personal weapon. And light support weapons will in general be issued on a one light support weapon to one GPMG basis, except for the infantry roll rifle sections, who will receive two light support weapons for each GPMG. And by the time the issue is complete, around 1993, some 381,000 individual weapons, 21,500 light support weapons, together with their ancillaries, would have been produced at Enfield. And at the height of production, 12,000 weapons a quarter will be coming off the factory line.
We are obviously unable to satisfy everyone with regard to how many of what type of weapon their unit will be receiving. So what we've done is select three major infantry battalions to give you an idea of the breakdown. In general, though, if you have an SLR or an SMG or a pistol at the moment, that will be exchanged for an individual weapon, and if you have an LMG or a GPMG in the light roll, that will be exchanged for a light support weapon. All pintle mounted weapons from now on will be GPMGs. Remember, it is only the rifle sections that will receive two light support weapons. So those even in the infantry battalions in support company or headquarter company will still only receive one LSW for the GPMG that they hand in. We turn now to the troop trials, which will be carried out next year by those 7 units that we showed you earlier. They'll last a year, starting in January 1986, and they're designed, and I quote, to provide a broad statistical base of any areas where the weapon system can be refined or does not reach the user requirement, and to refine practical usage and training programs. And the purpose of the trials really is to get some form of early indication of any small modifications that should be made either to the weapons or their ancillaries, and then those modifications can be brought into the later stages of production.
In practice, what that means is that the units concerned will carry out the normal year's training programme of the new weapons and be asked to complete a comprehensive questionnaire at the end of that year. It's not intended to place any unnecessary burden on the unit, but their main task will be the collation of information and the reporting of it. The questionnaire is out, and in general the units will be asked to comment on a wide range of subjects, ranging from the handling of the weapons, the drill, the new training pamphlet, any minor technical improvements required, the weapon skills required, also the ammunition skills required. Meanwhile, the Infantry Trial and Development Unit at Warminster will continue to carry out user trials as directed by the Ministry of Defence.
Some of you may well be thinking about converting to the new weapon system, and so indeed has the Small Arms Wing at the School of Infantry, Warminster. The general policy for conversion training will be for specialist instructors to train unit skill-at-arm instructors, who in turn will train their own men as and when they receive SA80. Clearly it's for the infantry to take the lead, which initially anyway will be provided by the Small Arms School Corps instructors. The outline plan for their conversion training can be seen here, which obviously is well underway, and that is that by mid-October 1985, the Small Arms School Corps will have trained themselves worldwide and also some other trainers from the other services. Then by the beginning of 1986, they will have trained the trials unit skill-at-arm instructors so that they can get on with the trials. Conversion training for those troop trials units, as it will be for anyone who receives the weapon early on, will be based on provisional SA80 weapon training pamphlets, an amended range conduct and safety rules pamphlet, and a rewritten shoot to kill. Then in the autumn, officers and NCO skill-at-arm instructors will either be trained at Warminster on a course, or more be trained in location by the nearest Small Arms School Corps team. And as you can see on there, that is a list of the teams nearest the trials units.
Once the trials units have been converted, the emphasis will then move to the regular infantry battalions. And from early 1986, officers and non-commissioned officers attending courses at the Small Arms Wing at Warminster will be trained on SA80. But they will be too few to take on full battalion conversion training when the new weapons arrive. So for UK and overseas battalions, less BAOR in Berlin, the training of instructors will involve either going to the School of Infantry on a course, or Small Arms School Corps teams going to the battalions just before the new weapons arrive in location.
At the same time, really, conversion training will take place at the infantry depots. Small Arms School Corps instructors will train depot skillet arm instructors at their depots prior to them receiving the bulk of the new weapons. And the principle will be for the recruit to join his unit trained in the weapon that that unit has on the day of his arrival. Obviously there'll be many ways of achieving this, and it'll be left, no doubt, up to the depot commanders to work it out. Basically, they will continue to train on SLR and run short conversion courses for those recruits joining an SA80 equipped unit, and then the balance will change and they'll train in bulk on SA80 and run conversion courses for any recruit joining units still equipped with the SLR. There may of course be a time when they have to run concurrently SA80 and SLR courses.
Regular battalions of the Northern Ireland Permanent Garrison with temporary Small Arms School Corps support will help to train the Ulster Defence Regiment. The first TA battalion to receive SA80 will be among the BAR reinforcing units in 1990. A decision on how the TA battalions are to be trained on the new weapon has been deferred at the moment, but the expertise at the infantry depots and in the regular infantry battalions in the 1990s suggests that they should play a major role in the conversion of the TA. Finally, and in conclusion, it's probably worth taking stock of exactly what this new family of small arms is going to offer us. There will be major savings in both training time and in logistic and armourer backup. Within the section, there will be a type of magazine-fed ammunition, and because of its size and its weight, if necessary, much more of it can be carried. The fact that light support weapons in any rifle section will give commanders at all levels, really, the flexibility of being able to operate his fire teams as he wishes, with always having the security of automatic fire if he needs it. Moreover, weapons, be you in the infantry or not, will have an automatic fire capability, and we can all think of occasions and phases of war where that will be invaluable. Above everything else that we've said, it is the accuracy of these weapons that we would like to emphasize. Any of you who may have fired the weapon, and certainly all the trial reports will tell you that the shooting results are going to be greatly enhanced. You'll see that the weapons have been very well designed for our physical needs, and I can assure you are perfectly capable of carrying out all the military tasks for which they have been produced.